Mexico is awash with violence from drug cartels. And for years, the narrative has been that illegal U.S. guns were fueling the fight. Full Measure has found a different story.
The vast majority of crime guns recovered in Mexico are purchased directly by the Mexican government.
This week, a former ATF agent offers a shocking source of who's really supplying the Mexican gang wars.
We will highlight more abuses of your tax dollars.
When DOJ turned the spotlight on wasteful spending, a lot of light went on non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, that feed the hungry and provide disaster relief around the world, and in some cases, push political agendas.
In the case of federally funded nonprofits, typically these are part of the left-wing political infrastructure.
But there's no way that Democrats or left-leaning groups are the only ones.
Record first were no novelty to aviatrix Amelia.
Amelia Earhart was an aviation pioneer and hero. President Trump is promising to release all the classified papers related to her disappearance more than 88 years ago. We visit the team heading on a mission to solve one of the world's most enduring mysteries.
If you find the wreckage on this expedition, do you believe that that would prove that theory that she did, in fact, survive?
I do.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Mexico's cartels are drowning in cash, fueled by record billions they got from smuggling drugs and people across our southern border. For years, the narrative pinned the escalating violence and bloodshed on U.S. gun smuggling and lax firearm laws. After all, American-made weapons litter Mexican crime scenes. But what if the truth is far different? Today, a former federal agent flips the script with a jaw-dropping twist. Many of the U.S. guns used in cartel crimes were originally bought by Mexico's own government. Deadly shootouts and clashes with police are a daily reality among Mexico's killer cartels. As a result, Mexico's gun homicide rate is 2 to 3 times worse than the U.S., over 21,700 gun murders in 2022. It's a flashpoint in the debate over firearms and crime and who's to blame. Mexico and gun control advocates have long blamed smuggling and America's loose gun laws. That's the story John Dodson says he was told throughout his 15 years as a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF.
Ever since I was first assigned to work firearms trafficking on the southwest border, it has widely been reported and utilized that the U.S. civilian firearms market is responsible for the majority of crime guns being recovered in Mexico.
So we're to blame for a lot of guns being used to kill people and do cartel crimes.
We are to blame. Our civilian firearms market, our right to bear arms, is to blame for the violence in Mexico and along the southwest border.
But that's a narrative, he says, that's upended by the surprising truth.
The vast majority of crime guns recovered in Mexico are purchased directly by the Mexican government.
Tracing data confirms it. Most of the U.S. firearms recovered from Mexican crime scenes weren't trafficked or smuggled. They were legally purchased by the Mexican government. Exact numbers are hard to come by, but a 2023 State Department report confirms the U.S. approved $147.7 million in small arms sales to Mexico from companies like Sig Sauer and Glock. Still more weapons are supplied through U.S. foreign military sales. Why is the U.S. government selling so many guns to the Mexican government?
When we first started telling the Mexicans, you have to do something to stop the drug trafficking coming north of the border, the Mexican authorities needed resources and funds to do that. So we started funding these operations, providing them with military surplus equipment, helicopters, firearms, providing them with hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase equipment, much of that firearms.
Dodson says his eyes were first opened back in 2009 as to how many of those legally sold guns end up in the wrong hands. At the time, he was assigned to Operation Fast and Furious. That's where U.S. agents were secretly ordered to let thousands of U.S. guns reach the cartels. John Dodson, a federal agent, says what he was asked to do was beyond belief.
You were intentionally letting guns go to Mexico.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the agency was.
When one of those guns was implicated in the murder of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, Dodson blew the whistle in a story I broke on CBS News. Dodson's job is to stop gun trafficking across the border. Instead, he says he was ordered to sit by and watch it happen. Dodson's bosses say that never happened. Now he's risking his job to go public.
I'm boots on the ground here in Phoenix and telling you we've been doing it every day since I've been here. Here I am. Tell me I didn't do the things that I did. Tell me you didn't order me to do the things that I did. Tell me it didn't happen. Now you have a name on it, you have a face to put with it. Here I am, someone now. Tell me it didn't happen.
But before the Fast and Furious scandal, Dodson was already on to another. He says he queried ATF's gun tracing network, and he saw that most of the U.S. guns turning up at cartel crime scenes were originally sold to the Mexican government.
When you first saw that, do you remember, was that like a wow moment for you as well?
Yeah, flabbergasted.
So you must have told everybody, including your supervisors,
Yes.
so they knew.
Yes. I've been pounding this drum for, almost 16 years now. I've brought this up to every supervisor I've had with ATF since 2009. I've taken this as far through my chain of command as I can take it, up until the day I retired. I even spoke to the highest ranking DOJ official in Mexico City and showed them this data. And nothing has changed.
So how are so many legally sold guns making it from the Mexican government into the hands of killer cartels? Believe it or not, the State Department only audits a tiny sample to find out, less than 1% of foreign sales, but the results are disturbing. In 2009, 26% of the arms had been confirmed diverted to criminals. A sensitive cable uncovered by WikiLeaks confirms it. The State Department wanted Mexico to answer how an AR-15 type semi-automatic rifle bought by the Mexican military got diverted into criminal hands, and more importantly, where other rifles from the same shipment went. Please account for the current location of the 1,030 AR-15 type rifles, reads the U.S. government cable. There's no response in the record.
The number one dealer on that every time is the Mexican government, for whatever 12-month period you want to pick between now and when we launched Spanish E-Trace in 2009.
We reviewed data from 2016 to 2023. It confirms the Mexican government was the top buyer of U.S. guns later traced to crime scenes in Mexico. This document shows the Mexican military, listed as dealer, purchased more than 2,000 from 2016 through 2021. This 2023 document sources a year's worth of U.S. guns from Mexican crime scenes. 779 of them were originally bought by the Mexican government. No other source is anywhere close. The State Department, which oversees foreign weapons sales, declined our interview request and wouldn't answer any of our questions. We also couldn't get any information from the Justice Department or the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. The State Department has told Congress its priority is national security. While U.S. and Mexican forces continue to fight brutal cartel violence, Dodson warns that the U.S. is inadvertently arming the very criminals it aims to stop.
What are your thoughts about whether the U.S. government should be selling so many guns to Mexico, even if the purchases at the time are legal, when so many of the guns end up in criminal hands?
From what I know, the amount of those firearms that are ending up being diverted to the black market, I would cease and desist all transactions with the Mexican government when it comes to firearms. And I would ask them for a strict and thorough accounting of everything that they have purchased and where is it? What can they lay their hands on right now? We have people on the border right now laid up in observation points along the border risking their lives, and yet we are supplying the cartels with the firearms. It has to stop. It's lunacy.
For more on this story, listen to my podcast, Full Measure After Hours. Ahead on Full Measure, the surprising political activities your favorite charity might be engaging in on the taxpayer dime. NGOs, or non-governmental organizations, feed the hungry and provide medical care to victims of disasters in the U.S. and around the world. But your tax dollars help fund them, and many use that to push political agendas. Scott Thuman investigates.
Welcome to another DOJ subcommittee hearing where we will highlight more abuses of your tax dollars.
A hearing on government efficiency may sound dry, but one this summer came with an audacious late-night style title: Public Funds, Private Agendas, NGOs Gone Wild. But no one was laughing.
The left has funneled hundreds of billions of federal tax dollars through non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to push destructive policies and line the pockets of their friends and allies,
Raising concerns that some non-governmental organizations may be using public money to advance private and political interests. Republican lawmakers are pushing for spending cuts.
But charity isn't given at the strong arm mandate of the federal government requiring taxpayers.
Between 2023 and 2024, more than $300 billion in tax dollars were given to over 100,000 NGOs.
The nonprofit tail wags the Democratic Party dog. It is enormously more important who is head of the Ford Foundation, the Open Society Foundation, Arabella Advisors, than whoever's chairing the DNC this afternoon.
Scott Walter is president of the Capital Research Center, which analyzes how foundations, nonprofits, and special interest groups use money to influence politics and public policy.
Over 35,000 nonprofits get most of their money from the government. In the case of federally funded nonprofits, typically these are part of the left-wing political infrastructure. So you have things like the Urban League, for instance, or the Solidarity Institute, which is a subsidiary of the AFL-CIO Labor Union Confederation.
An analysis of that NGO, which promotes worker rights and union organizing worldwide, indicates more than 86 million taxpayer dollars have been awarded since 2008, the majority of it during the Biden administration. Also take, for example, Catholic Charities. Between 2021 and 2024, the charity most notable for its work with illegal immigrants on the southern border received more than $2 billion in federal grants.
Under the Biden administration, when they had their disastrous border policies, had this explosion of refugees, many of whom were not really refugees. They were just folks like, hey, I want to get to America and try to make some extra money. And that meant more money for these charities.
Because the more that happens, the more they're getting in support, more money
exactly.
they get.
And obviously, you know, there really are refugees from terrible places around the world who come, and you having the Lutherans or the Catholics or whatever help them, that's a noble, good thing. But the problem is, when more and more of the budget of those nonprofits is coming from the government, well, then they want to keep it coming.
But there's no way that Democrats or left-leaning groups are the only ones who take advantage of this opportunity. I'm sure right-wing groups do too, right?
It is true that there are groups that do take it. So USAID was a big funder of both the International Republican Institute, which is a Republican entity that helped teach people in other countries how to run elections. There's a Democrat counterpart to that, and it got money too. So it is certainly not exclusively on the left, but the differences in the amount of money are enormous.
Well, do you see the government at some point just saying, we're not going to keep doling out all this money?
DOJ, God bless them, has stopped some of it, but there's so much more And to be fair, it's not easy to write an always rule, right? Because, as I said, let's say some terrible thing happens in a country, and we, in our great tradition of generosity, say, well, we want to help your starving people who've had this catastrophe. At the same time, it's true, it would be so much better if they were true charities, not taking that government money, because government money, it's not poison, but it easily turns into poison.
With the DOGE effort still thoroughly underway in the federal government, it is a number many on Capitol Hill want to see under closer watch. For Full Measure, I'm Scott Thuman in Washington, D.C.
Coming up on Full Measure, a potential answer to aviation's biggest mystery. President Trump recently promised to declassify all government records related to record-setting pilot Amelia Earhart. That after a delegate from the Northern Mariana Islands in the Pacific Ocean told Trump that elderly residents had shared credible first-hand accounts of seeing Earhart there. The official U.S. government position is that Earhart's plane crashed into the Pacific after running out of fuel in 1937. Now, after nearly 9 decades, is aviation's greatest mystery about to be solved with an expedition soon to be launched from Purdue University? Mackenzie Frost reports.
This is the famous hangar number 1 at the Purdue University Airport.
Purdue University in Indiana has a special link with Amelia Earhart. In the 1930s, the aviator taught here. The college also supported her final expedition. In February of this year, leaders got startling news from a team of international researchers who have spent years looking for Earhart's missing Lockheed Electra twin-engine plane.
The subject line of the email was, "The Electra, we may have found it."
Steve Schultz is Purdue's senior vice president.
The evidence is overwhelming that the castaway hypothesis is supportable.
Record first were no novelty to aviatrix Amelia.
When Amelia Earhart took off to circumnavigate the globe at the equator, she had already shattered glass ceilings and set records. The first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. The first woman to fly nonstop across the United States. But in 1937, when she and navigator Fred Noonan did not make it to Howland Island for a refueling stop while crossing the Pacific, it shocked the world.
Whether she and her navigator had been lost at sea.
An exhaustive search turned up nothing. For decades, speculation swirled. Then in 2020, what's known as the Taraya object was noticed on a satellite image for the first time in a lagoon off the small South Pacific island of Murrow.
Since then, Archaeological Legacy Institute has gone back and found other images dating to 2015 when this object in the lagoon of the island first became visible. That happens to coincide with Tropical Cyclone Pam, one of the worst tropical storms in the South Pacific in many decades. So the theory is that the sediment was washed off the plane.
It's not the first time evidence has been found on the island. In fact, there's been a lot found there.
A woman's compact case, a freckle cream jar, parts of a shoe that were of the very type that Amelia Earhart wore.
And even human bones that are a near complete match for Earhart have been found. Just never the big piece of the puzzle, the aircraft itself. So this November, Schultz will be part of a team to visit Murrow to determine if the Taraya object is Amelia Earhart's plane.
There's a lot of evidence that she survived the crash based on the intercepted radio messages that people claim that they have heard from her. If you find the wreckage on this expedition, do you believe that that would prove that theory that she did, in fact, survive?
I do. I think finding the Electra, confirming that the Taraya object is the Electra, is the smoking gun that has always eluded those working on the so-called castaway hypothesis. Sometimes science requires you to confirm a truth, to prove it out, and follow the hypothesis in that way. What we can't do is not go, because then the world will always wonder, what is it in that lagoon that we can see in the satellite imagery?
Also captivated by the mystery, President Trump now promising to release everything the government knows about Earhart's disappearance.
Do you have any idea what the world will see when that happens? What's in the Amelia Earhart files?
I speak for the experts who have spoken publicly on this. They've studied the Murrow hypothesis for years, and they're not aware of any records that remain classified. So on the other hand, those without a top secret clearance wouldn't necessarily have knowledge of any such records.
One theory that's long been speculated about, was she involved in intelligence gathering on the Japanese ahead of World War II?
Do you think that what the president said about declassifying these files kind of adds to the mystery and the intrigue surrounding this?
The world has always been fascinated by her and by the circumstances of her disappearance, and that's absolutely right.
Beyond her mysterious fate, Earhart's larger-than-life presence felt clearly here at Purdue. Madeline Eckberg is a senior studying aviation management.
I mean, she encouraged so many women to go out and do great things just like she had done.
She's also the local chapter chair of the 99s, an association of women working in aviation. Amelia Earhart was the group's first president.
How do you feel about this expedition and this search that is, potentially history-making?
I've heard so many theories over the years. It's fantastic that we might finally get some more information and evidence about what happened to her. And maybe just encourage more women, with all of the talk about this expedition.
The nearly century-long mystery of Earhart's disappearance is not the only thing that has endured. So has her legacy of inspiring women.
Amelia Earhart did all of these amazing and wonderful things, but she didn't quite reach her goal, and maybe I can reach mine.
And so say they find this plane and it's hers, what next? Do they look for evidence of her being there?
Well, in 1940, there were bones that were found on this island. At the time, they were thought to be male, but recent analysis done in the last 7 years really indicated that the bones were likely Amelia Earhart's. However, the analysis wasn't of the bones themselves because they actually disappeared. The analysis was of measurements of the bones. So because we don't have any DNA, the mystery of what actually happened to Amelia Earhart may never be solved.
I sure hope that's not the case.
I think a lot of people think that.
Thanks, Mackenzie. After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Coming up next week on Full Measure, we head across the U.S. to take stock of one of President Trump's key promises.
Yeah, I think it really changes the landscape. I mean, if you look over the years, we've dropped to somewhere around 10% or less chips made in the United States. Now we're bringing that back into the United States and bringing it back in the most advanced technology into the United States.
What many call a renaissance in U.S. manufacturing, next week on Full Measure. Until then, we'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. Thanks for watching.